Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Tribal Summit this morning. Our first session this morning is the ATTAINS session. And I just wanted to go over a couple of things. If you are a call-in person, if you're using your phone to call in today, you will need to email me or Chelsea Jones your questions. And we will be utilizing the chat box for any questions that you have. And we'll take questions after each presenter. And you will notice that you're not able to see any of the other attendees. That's just the way ATTAINS sets up the events platform. So I think that's all I needed to go over. So I will turn it over to Selena with EPA. She's our first presenter this morning. Selena, you have the floor.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm glad to be here today. Some of you may know me or have heard me speak before, but I am with EPA Region 6, and I work with a lot of our tribes in Region 6, along with some of my colleagues. And I think most of you know your project officers, but at the end, we'll go over your technical officers because you might be less familiar with us. But today I'm going to be talking about getting started in ATTAINS, what you'll need, what to expect if you so choose to use ATTAINS in the future for your assessment reports. So just to give you a little bit of an idea why we should use ATTAINS, a lot of the things that we do through our program are connected. So our waters are connected with our beneficial uses or designated uses, which are connected to criteria, which then have decision rules that are applied to our sampling results to determine attainment of our waters. And ATTAINS houses those attainment decisions, and using ATTAINS can help provide us with some program efficiencies and enhancements, and I'll walk through some of these today. And again, what you can expect. All right, let's see. There we go. Benefits. Some of the benefits of using ATTAINS you can see on the screen. Electronic submission may not seem like a big deal, but it really is if you're one of those people that has to deal with large email files that bounce back all the time. Doing this electronically is so much easier. Online access is really important. Let's say you have a computer like mine that crashes all the time. So I apologize if my computer crashes during this, but it does. You can log into ATTAINS from anywhere that you have online access as long as you remember your login information. So that's really beneficial. Time savings. Overall, to submit your assessment report takes a lot less time, days instead of months. Keep in mind that there is an initial startup that is going to take a while, but once you get information into ATTAINS, it's actually really easy to update that information, which is the next one, easy updates. Very, very easy. And I'll show you some screenshots to give you a bit of an idea of how easy this is to do. Additionally, ATTAINS allows for continuity. So let's say a staff member leaves and they knew everything that was going on. Well, in ATTAINS, your information is saved. So you can go in there, you can pick up basically where they left off. Also with ATTAINS, something that we're looking for is making sure that you have a lot of the information that you need in one place. So again, that's going to help with your continuity. ATTAINS also can help with some trends, seeing how your waters are doing over time. And that goes with your increased data analysis and understanding of how all of this fits together. Another big benefit of ATTAINS is that it puts you on an equal playing field with states. We're using the same system of states, so that's really, really important. It also allows for easy reporting to Congress. So when they do the report out to Congress, they can just pull information from ATTAINS. So much easier than trying to track everyone down and finding the reports. And again, your information, all the work that you're doing is publicly available. And if you haven't played with How's My Waterway, I definitely suggest that you do that. and get an idea of what information is out there. So right now, we are actually in the first phase of the rollout process after our initial pilot phase. And how this phase went is a solicitation went out for tribes to participate. Tribes then submitted a letter of interest that they did want to be involved in this process. Their regional counterparts concurred that these tribes met the eligibility prereqs. And I think this past cycle, I think we accepted about 20 new tribes, which is a big deal. And if we combine the tribes from the pilot and this rollout process, we've got participation from tribes from regions 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And that's a pretty big deal. It's definitely expanding our ability to see what is happening with tribe lands, tribe waters, and get that report out to Congress, which is also very important. So I mentioned prerequisites. What you need to be sure you're doing is meeting all of your 106 grant requirements, be able to actively submit your data, be able to perform water quality assessment. So linking your parameters to your beneficial uses, such as your recreation or aquatic life. Be committed to revising your methodology. Now, it's not expected that you have this your assessment methodology in place prior to participation, but having that assessment method in place will help you submit your information to ATTAINS. And the last thing on this slide is having adequate time to participate. Now, like I said, it requires a heavy lift at the beginning to get started, but after that, you should be smooth. Our tribes that were in the pilot reported it took about 70 hours to move into electronic reporting in ATTAINS. However, once they got everything into ATTAINS, it only took about 16 hours that next year to actually perform their assessments and upload that to ATTAINS. So next, we're going to look at all the pieces of information that you should gather in order to make your ATTAINS submission successful. First thing is designated uses or beneficial uses. If you want to read more about this, go to 40 CFR section 131.3. There's some information there. But you'll want to know what uses apply to your waters. And keep in mind that not all uses will apply to all of your waters necessarily. You can look in your water quality standards if you have them as to what beneficial uses apply to your waters. Otherwise, you can look around at surrounding tribes or at the state to see the kinds of uses that they apply to the waters and see what is good for you and your tribe. Next piece of information is the criteria. So with your uses, you're going to have parameters that you evaluate to determine whether or not your use is being supported. And with that, with your parameter is going to come a criteria element to that. Again, you can look in the water quality standards for this if you have them, or you can look at standards at surrounding tribes or states to see what you might be able to pull, what might be applicable to your waters. So a criteria is an element. It's going to be expressed as a concentration or a level. It can also be a narrative statement. So if we have, for instance, a numeric criteria, it's going to have a magnitude, a duration, and a frequency, or you could put them together like I did. So magnitude, duration, frequency, that's your how much, your how long, and your how often. So if we took a dissolved zinc example, and we might say dissolved zinc shall not exceed 90 micrograms per liter. So that's my magnitude or my how much. As a 1 hour average, that's my duration or how long. More than once every 3 years, that's my frequency or my how often. So that's going to be different from a narrative, which is a string of descriptive words that actually might not be overly descriptive. It might be a huge umbrella, such as no toxics in toxic amounts. So that could apply to a lot of things, right? So it just depends on what our water quality standards say or what water quality criteria we want to use or standards that we're mimicking from other tribes or from the state. Another piece of information that we want to have is your assessment method. And this is going to be your decision-making process for your attainment. So now that we have our designated or beneficial use, our criteria, we need some way to determine what our results mean in comparison to that, right? So here are some pretty common rules. Probably most people are familiar with the percent exceedance. So for instance, no more than 10% of your samples exceed your criteria. There's also a rate of occurrence, no more than once in 3 years. So that is typically applicable to things like toxics, so metals, maybe ammonia as well. We also have outside of a range. Typical example of this is going to be pH, which also might be combined with your percent exceedance. So for instance, our range for pH might be 6 to 9 and no more than 10% of our sample values outside of that range. We also might have a not to exceed. And the most common example of this is going to be your bacteria geometric mean. So once we calculate that geometric mean, it's a shall not exceed. So if our geometric mean is above our criteria value, then our use is not supported. Typically, what we've asked for with tribes starting out in ATTAINS is to fill out what we call the Big Four worksheet. And I'll give you an idea of these questions that we ask. The first one is, what are your assessment units? And there's 3 options here on the screen, and you can choose one, or you can have a combination of these. What I see a lot of tribes do is this first one, monitoring location only, where this is where we take our sample point, and that's to what our attainment decisions apply to that point. We also have length of stream. So from this point to this point, this is our assessment unit. We can sample along here, and our results of the results of our attainment decision apply to this length of stream. We also have areas such as our hydrologic unit code or lake. Those can also be your assessment units. We also ask how many samples are needed in order for you to make an attainment decision. And here we've got a couple of options. We've got 10 samples for DO and 6 for E. coli. The next questions we ask are, what are the criteria that you're going to use to make these decisions? And I want to point something out here. ATTAINS does not make the decisions for you. It houses the decisions that you make. But having this gathered all in one place is really, really, really important for you to be able to make those decisions quickly so that you can put them into ATTAINS. And the next question that we ask are your decision rules. What are the metrics that you're going to use? So here we have dissolved oxygen to be supporting of our use. Less than or equal to 10% of our samples are going to be below our criteria value. Not supporting would be greater than 10% or below our criteria. Same with E. coli. We're using 10% here for the single sample max. Less than 10%, less than or equal 10% is equal to or is supporting, and greater than 10% exceeding our criteria is going to be not supporting our use. So let's try putting all of these pieces together. And if this is our sample area, you'll see that we've got 7 stations, and those are going to be 7 assessment units. And we have an 8th assessment unit that is a lake, that is a polygon or an area. So this would be a combination of assessment unit types. And the first thing we did was assign our beneficial uses. And we decided that for our area, we want everything to have a use of warm water aquatic life and primary contact recreation. And this is an example of what a table for our waters might look like. So I took one station here on Muddy Creek and applied my uses, the parameters that assess those uses. And let's break this down because this is a really, really busy slide. So what we have here is we have our assessment unit name. We have our parameter name. So I just took one for example. Here we have the number of samples that we need in order to make an attainment decision. We have our water quality criteria here. And this is our method or our decision rules. So this together is our path to attainment. So dissolved oxygen, our criteria is 6. Again, less than equal to 10% is going to be supporting our use or protecting our use. Greater than 10% is going to be not supporting. And we've got our designated use labeled very clearly right here in the table. So that's something that you'll probably want to make for yourselves so you have easy reference for all of your waters when you're going through looking at your samples. So let's try to translate in all of this into ATTAINS now that we've got our pre-work out of the way. And this will give you a really, really brief introduction to what ATTAINS looks like. So you're not surprised if you do go ahead and start to use ATTAINS. And I want to talk about ways to populate ATTAINS. There are 2 ways to do that. They're both good. They do have slightly different benefits, and which method you choose is largely going to be dependent on how you operate. So the first option is manual entry. It's great for a small number of assessment units. It's easy because ATTAINS walks you through the process. Where some people have gotten tripped up is forgetting to hit the save button before they move on. ATTAINS really, really likes you to save things, and probably everyone else likes you to save things too, so you don't have to go back and do things. But that was a little bit of a source of frustration early on. Batch upload is good if you have a large number of assessment units. First, you populate a spreadsheet, and then you upload it to ATTAINS. And now we actually do have a template that is specific to tribes. So that is really good, a great benefit for you guys. So I'm going to show you what ATTAINS looks like on the assessment units tab. When you open up ATTAINS, you're going to see this bar at the top. And if you click on assessment units, this is what it's going to look like once you've got all of your assessment units in there. You can see we've got your assessment unit ID, the name, water type, size. In this case, it's 0 because our assessment units are points, miles that goes with your size, and then the status, whether it's active or retired. Now, in this screen, you'll see they're all active, and that's fine. To create a new AUID, so let's say you've been sampling these several stations for a long time, but you've decided you need to gather more information about another area. What you would do is come up here to this Create Assessment Unit button, and you would click on that, and that will take you through a manual entry screen. And this is what it would look like. The fields with asterisks will need to be populated. And this includes your information, such as your unique identifier, your assessment unit name, location description, and a comment field that pertains to this assessment unit in particular. So in our example, we would have MC_01 as our unique identifier. We'd have Muddy Creek. Our location description might be something like above Big River Confluence. The comment field here is optional. You see it doesn't have an asterisk, but you might put something in there like site established 2021 if this is a new site that you haven't been sampling for several years. Or it could be other important information to you, such as why you chose this specific site to sample. In subsequent screens, ATTAINS will actually walk you through populating other information such as water type, location information, monitoring stations, We won't go through all of that for brevity, but just something for you to be aware of if you do start using ATTAINS. There are more screens behind this. And this is just the batch upload equivalent to that first screen there. You can see we have a lot of the same information in here. And for batch upload, you'll see we'll have to have populate our assessment unit ID as well as our unit name. Here we've got state and unit agency, which is tribe, which you would see in subsequent screens on the manual entry. And here we also have our location description and a comments field should we choose to use that. And this is what it would look like once we get to the end and look at a summary for a specific assessment unit. And you can see all that same information is here that we saw in both manual and batch upload. So once we have all of that into the system, we can move on to our assessments tab. And again, at the top, when you sign into ATTAINS, you'll have this bar. If you click on the assessments, this is what it's going to look like. You're going to have your ID, your name, your water type, status, cycle last assessed, last modified, cycle last modified. You have all this information here. So to show you how to get that into the system through manual entry, you'll see again, we've got the required fields with the asterisks. And agency, also you would click over into tribal. And you can fill out the other fields here as you see necessary. And you will move through these tabs at the top. So we've got uses, parameters, sources, which you may or may not have, documents. This document screen is specific to this particular assessment. And then you'd have a summary. And you would click through all of these, filling out the information that you need. So again, that's why it's so important to have that other information all gathered. So you have your uses, you know what uses apply to this water. You have your parameters, you know which parameters apply to this water. And you'll need to associate those together. So if you remember in our example, we had DO, pH for warm water aquatic life and some others. And we also had E. coli for primary recreation. This is the batch upload equivalent to that. You see we've got a lot of the same information. And again, here we do require the assessment unit ID, whereas when we did the manual data entry, we just clicked on the assessment AUID that we wanted to populate. But here we do have to connect that in our spreadsheet. And there are subsequent spreadsheets behind this where you would fill in your designated use, where you would fill in your parameters that all apply to this and their attainment decisions. And this is what your summary is going to look like at the end. And you can see all that information is populated here, our ID, our river miles, we're in tribe, our state, our location description. It's all in here. And here's a great comment field. And you can see here it was populated for a fiscal year of October 2019 through September of 2020. That's important information for your technical reviewer to have so that they know what data you use to make this assessment. And be sure to update that comment field with each cycle. And again, this is just a summary showing the uses. We have more uses than what I talked about in our example, but they're all there and whether or not they're supporting or not supporting. Same with parameters. We have more than I put in the example, but they're there. And then they have parameter status, meeting or a cause, so not meeting. So now that we've gone through what all these screens look like, I just want to give you some things to remember when you are using ATTAINS, should you decide to join us and use it. Like I said, be sure that you're updating the comments for each cycle. And whether you're doing it through manual entry or batch upload, they can be updated either way, but make sure they do apply to the cycle that you're currently in. Using ATTAINS does not make written reports obsolete. A narrative report covering all of your activities under the grant still needs to go to your project officer. ATTAINS holds attainment decisions. It does not make the decision for you. I want to be very clear about that. It's easy to update cycle to cycle. So if you go back and remember some of those summary pages, you can go and do manual entry and flip the drop down from cause to meeting criteria. It's very easy to do, and be sure that you update your use if you also need to update your use with that change. Attach your big four. So that's an important thing to attach to your cycle so that the technical reviewer knows what you're thinking, what your map is to make your attainment decision. You can also use that area to attach other documents that you think might be important. Maybe you have a little write-up that goes with your assessment cycle this year. You can put that in there. You can put your QAP in there, your work plan. You can put a lot of useful information in there if you choose to. Another important note is once you're ready for EPA review, you can promote it to organization public comment or organization final action submittal. Either of these will notify your tech reviewer and your project officer that you have submitted a cycle to ATTAINS. And from there, if we have changes, if we have some back and forth comments that maybe we need to work out, if you have submitted to organization public comment, you can just go ahead and go in there and do that. If you submitted to organization final action, your EPA tech reviewer will have to send that back to you. It's not a big deal. Just so you know that if you're anticipating that maybe we'll have to go back and forth on some comments to your assessment report, you might want to use organization public comment to submit it to us, and then you can just go ahead and make those changes as we talk about them. So I did want to talk about adding documents to the cycle really quickly. So if you go into your assessments tab and you select menu, you'll have a drop down. If you select manage cycle, it'll bring you to a new screen. And on that screen, you can select the cycle that is currently in progress that you want to attach your documents to. When you click on that, a new screen will open up below, and then you can put your correct agency code, name the document how you want it to appear in ATTAINS. You can select the document type, and then you can choose your file from your computer. And then once you add, that document will show up there. And that's an easy way to share information with your technical reviewers. I also wanted to quickly, if we've got some veteran ATTAINS users on here, show you some new features. This help feature is actually very, very extensive. There's a wealth of information under these tabs. If you're stuck on something, I suggest clicking on your tab, the tab that you're in that matches the one you're working in. And there will be a bunch of documents under here that you can search through, and hopefully you can figure out what's going on with your problem. But if not, please just ask someone. When you're coming into ATTAINS for the first time, you're going to be paired with a mentor tribe. So use them as a resource. They're very knowledgeable at this point about using ATTAINS and navigating it and coming up with solutions to the specific issue that you're having. And if they're stuck too, talk to your region. Your tech reviewers are pretty adept in using ATTAINS, so ask them. They're here as a resource, so don't ever forget that. We're here to help, that's for sure. Another new feature that's really cool is these little eye icons. When you click on it, it's going to pop up a bubble with some information, and as you'll see, this comment field is not published in public ATTAINS web services, and it says it's optional. So that gives you a little bit of information if you're stuck, you're not quite sure what you want to put there, or if you do want to put something there. And I've been talking a lot about technical reviewers. The technical reviewers over here on the left are your veteran technical reviewers. And over here, we've got some new people in our section. And all or a subset of these people will hopefully become technical reviewers in the future, and they'll probably be working with us. So you might see their names from time to time, maybe copied on some communication so that they can learn and be involved in ATTAINS and what we do. And with that, Karen, I'm done. So are there any questions?
Thank you, Selena. I don't see any questions in the chat box. Let me check my email real quick. If anyone would like to ask any questions, you can utilize the chat box. Let me check my emails. I don't see any just yet. Don't see any yet, but we can always check again once we're finished with the session. Thank you, Selena. I appreciate it very much. And I will, if you want to go ahead and stop sharing your screen, I will give Jesse presenter privileges. Our next presenter is Jesse Borman-Paget, and he is with EPA also. So I just made you presenter, Jesse. You should be able to share your screen now and
Okay.
turn it over to Jesse. Thank you.
Okay, do you see the slides?
Yes.
Great. So, yeah, hi, I'm Jesse Born-Padgett. I work at the EPA headquarters, Water Data Integration Branch. And I'm going to talk about update on the tribal reporting to ATTAINS and kind of an overview. So it might be a little similar to what you heard from Selena, but probably enough different information. So let's begin. So I want to start with what is ATTAINS. So ATTAINS stands for the Assessment and TMDL Tracking and Implementation System. Well, what is that? So I like this diagram because it really shows how it fits into the bigger picture. So you have your program inputs, your QAPP, your thresholds or standards, your monitoring strategy. And then you take that with your assessment process, which includes your assessment methodology and your raw data from WQX. As Selena mentioned, every tribe that submits to ATTAINS submits their data to WQX as well. And you put these together and they create this final water quality reporting product, which in the paper world is known as a tribal assessment report, or TAR, also called a water quality assessment report in some regions. And that is where ATTAINS fits in. ATTAINS is like the data behind that tribal assessment report. And so you take this together and it creates the ATTAINS, and you have the ATTAINS report. And then that's good and is a end in and of itself, but some tribes use it as a stepping stone to program goals for them as well, such as TAS for 3D, or using doing more geospatial analysis for their assessment units, etc. And the other thing that has been part of this is over here on the assessment process side, we've been working with introducing some automated assessment tools to help tribes assess their data. This isn't required, but EPA has some tools that we created that some tribes have taken advantage of, and are certainly open to future tribes in the program. And actually, EPA is also working on creating new automated data assessment tools in the next year or two that will help with this process as well. And so now that we talked about what ATTAINS is and how it fits into the big picture, I want to talk about some of the components. Selena mentioned these, so I'm just going to go over it briefly. You have your assessment units, which is where the decision was made. Again, for tribes, usually these are points, but they can be sections of stream or a whole lake or even a watershed. But usually tribes use the monitoring location. So they say this assessment decision applies to where I took the sample. And then the assessment is the status of water quality at each location. This is really the meat of ATTAINS. This is where you have your uses, your parameters, all that stuff that Selena went much more in depth on. And then actions is another major piece of ATTAINS, and it's all things being done to restore or maintain water quality, such as like a TMDL, for instance. Tribes generally don't use this, and in fact, no tribe has used this section in ATTAINS yet. But it's something that could be used in the future by tribes as they use the fact that ATTAINS does inform the conversation about water quality and make progress on restoring waters, but not anything that needs to be done right now. So a little background on ATTAINS and the pilot. So around the 2016 time period, EPA started working on building what we called the new ATTAINS, and now we just call ATTAINS. Mainly for state 303D and 305B reporting. But the idea came that we could use this for tribes as well. So in 2016, we started this pilot with 13 tribes spread across regions 5, 6, and 9. And so through 2016 and most of 2017, the pilot tribes worked on learning ATTAINS, submitting their big four, like Selena mentioned. And then by the end of 2017, they were able to start reporting their water quality assessments through ATTAINS. And so the objectives of this was to test whether ATTAINS can serve as an alternate reporting mechanism for tribal water quality assessment reporting, because as I mentioned, it was originally designed for states to see if it worked for tribes as well, which we found it did very well, with some tweaks for tribes, but that's not really that important. We also wanted to really capture the programs as they exist. We wanted it to be a tool that tribes could use regardless of whether they had TAS or 303D, or even if they had water quality standards. You really wanted it to be able to capture how things exist for those tribes. And then the last objective, which is really important, was to understand the water quality on tribal land. So this is really a tool to get the data out there and for the public to see and get this picture of water quality on data on tribal lands. And to that end, EPA created this web-based tool called How's My Waterway. The new version of it launched in June 2020. And this was to get the data from the new ATTAINS out to the public, really. And so it started with states, but in December 2020, the tribal assessment data was added to the community page. So How's My Waterway tells the story at 3 levels: community, state, and national. And the tribal data was added to the community page, you can see here. These are tribal points, and the data is displayed side by side with state data. So these points are assessed by the tribe, and you can see this little squiggly line, and this lake here are assessed by the state. And this dark gray box is the reservation boundary. So now so the pilot tribes data is currently visible in How's My Waterway. side by side with the states at the community page. And then, so the state page has information for each state, like metrics and narrative report that the states created. And so we are now currently looking at doing something similar for the tribes, and this is the tribal pages. And so that is something we are currently exploring and will be coming soon. And we will be getting input from tribes as we build it. And so I want to mention Housing and Waterway just because it's like, it really helps the public understand the water quality on tribal lands. So some lessons learned from our pilot experience. And it seems daunting at first, but it gets easier, especially once you get that first submission into ATTAINS, because then ATTAINS just pulls everything forward for the next year, and you only have to update what's changed. So if a water was not meeting its standards last year and it's still not this year, then you don't really have to do much. You do have to update the comments, as Celine mentioned, so your technical reviewer know exactly which data you use for that. But other than that, it's pretty easy. It's one thing was found that it's important to have data properly loaded into WQX, because your reviewer will be pulling your data out of the water quality portal to make sure that to see what you're take a look at what you're saying. And so it's important to have it not preliminary, have it final, and so forth in WQX. And yeah, as Celine mentioned, using org public comment statuses allows changes to be made easily. Basically, the advice we've been saying is start communicating with your region early, as early as you're comfortable with, really. Like ATTAINS even has a feature where you can share your draft data with EPA if you're comfortable doing that. So earlier that conversation gets started, the less work it is later. Some considerations about using ATTAINS. It is only the required data behind the decision. So you will need to attach additional information that you would otherwise attach in your tribal assessment report, such as if your tribe acquired new land, if a new potential polluter has been established, etc. And a brief summary of any water quality concerns you want your region to be made aware of. So where are we now? So after we had the highly successful pilot, we started discussing a national rollout. So we're currently doing this in phases. So in 2020, we started recruiting additional tribes. So we got 19 tribes spread across regions 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, and 8 in the first phase of the rollout. So these tribes are currently being trained up on ATTAINS and assessment methodologies and so forth. And we'll start reporting their water quality assessments at the end of this year. And then we did this mentorship program where the new tribes were partnered with mentor tribes in the pilot to help really just help them get the tribal perspective of saying to ATTAINS and help share the burden of training with EPA. The mentor tribes were intentionally chosen. These pairings are done intentionally. Generally, we tried to keep the tribes either geographically close so that they could potentially maybe once the pandemic's over, meet in person to go through ATTAINS together and help them, or we paired tribes together that have similar data issues as mentee tribes, such as if there's a tribe that has a lot of data, so they use the batch upload capability that Selena mentioned, we'd pair them with a tribe that is also planning to use the batch upload capability in Attain so that they can help out there. And that is what I have. Any questions?
Thank you, Jesse. I don't see any questions in the chat box just yet. So if you have any questions for Jesse, please use the chat box. If you are calling in, you can send me an email or Jesse an email. Let me check my email real quick. I don't see any questions just yet. And there on the screen is Jesse's email address if you have any questions after the fact, or if you have any questions later, you can always send them to me and I will forward them to Jesse.
Okay. Yep, please feel free to email me at that email address. Yeah, have any questions?
Okay. Dale Miller, did you try to send a question? I don't see a question. You might try to send it again.
Could have sent it directly to Jesse.
Jesse, you might want to check your chat box. He may have sent it to you or Selena privately.
I don't have anything in my chat box.
Okay. Selena, do you have anything in your chat box?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Let's give Dale just a minute to see if he wants to ask one of you guys a question real quick. We have plenty of time left, so. Oh, I see it now. How has ATTAINS been accepted by the tribes, liked or disliked? That's the first question.
Do you want to take that, Selena?
Sure, I guess. Well, Dale, you are a tribe, so you tell me. But I think for the most part, tribes have been really receptive to it. I think that after that first initial lift, as you know, that most have really embraced it and really appreciate the time savings that's involved with it. But if you have other feedback, I will be happy to take that.
Thank you, Selena. The next question, what kind of problems did the tribes face or have in common? I guess that question could be for either one of you guys.
So I'll start, Jesse. I think one of the most common things was if tribes were using the batch upload, then sometimes they would get tripped up on making sure that everything agreed properly across their parameters and their beneficial uses. And so, for instance, they might have dissolved oxygen as a cause, but then dissolved oxygen is used to determine attainment for their aquatic life, and their aquatic life would be fully supporting. Which it can't be that way if it's got a cause in it. So I think that was probably the biggest trip up with batch upload and trying to resolve those errors. And then if they were not using batch upload, I think the biggest thing was, like I said in the presentation, making sure that we hit the save button before we're moving on. I saw, especially in trainings, a lot of people get tripped up with hitting that save button or not hitting that save button and then having the next screen not pop up for them or them not being able to move on, and that was definitely causing frustration. But overall, I think we're moving pretty smoothly in terms of reviewing what's been submitted to us in ATTAINS from the EPA side. And I have not heard any complaints in a while from any tribes, but you guys do know how to reach me if you do need to talk about something and do have a complaint.
Thank you, Selena. Dell also posted positively or negatively, and how has it helped with the EPA funding reports and such to the congressional funding committees?
Can you repeat the first part of that question, please? Sorry, I want to make sure
Sure.
that I caught it.
Positively or negatively, and how has it helped with the EPA funding reports and such? And then he added to the congressional funding committees.
Okay, so overall, I think positive or negative, I think it's definitely been a positive for us and a positive for the public to be able to see the work that you guys are doing. As far as the congressional reports, I don't know that either Jesse and I can really speak much to that, but we do know that it has been a much easier process, and getting more accurate information from tribes into those reports it is essential for you guys as well as us. Jesse, did you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I think you covered it. Yeah, it's just great to have it more accessible for both EPA and the public.
I agree, because you guys are doing a lot of work and a lot of really good work, and it's great to have it out there and available for everyone to see, not just what you guys are doing, not just EPA seeing what you guys are doing, but everybody can see what you guys are doing.
Okay, I don't see any other comments in the chat box, and I checked my email. I didn't see any questions emailed to me just yet. So thank you, Jesse and Selena, for presenting this morning, and thank you for everyone for joining us this morning. Also, I wanted to remind everyone to join us again at 10:30 for the water quality standards session. With that, thank you, everyone, and we will talk to everyone this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.